And here we go. We're blasting off. We're taking off into the unknown, into space, if you will. I'm not saying that the movie we're talking about necessarily involves space aliens, because that would be spoilery. That would be telling. But it's about people who do definitely believe in space aliens. We are talking about Yorgos Lanthimos's Bugonia. Um, One of the wildest films I've seen in quite a long time, and dare I say, one of the best. I was pleasantly surprised by this movie. Uh, I've not seen all of Yorgos Lanthimos's films, but I did see Poor Things, which I did not care for. I also saw Dogtooth. That was my first experience with him, as I think a lot of people was,
Mhm.
back in 2009, and I really loved that movie. So it was great to go to the theater and see this wild, almost indescribable film. But we're going to do our best to describe it tonight. And who are we? We are Earth's Mightiest Critics. I'm Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat, and I have Mark the Movie Man Krawcheck of Special Mark Productions and the Spoiler Room Podcast. Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Didn't wasn't quite up where you are with this film, but I still enjoyed it. But I will say out of the Yorgo. Now I haven't seen all of Kind of Kindness, so I can't say for sure. But yeah, I'm sure we'll get into it. But yeah, I'm happy to be here. Happy to discuss this. And maybe you'll turn it around for me and make it feel like one of the better films I've seen this year. It's still a solid film. Don't get me wrong. I compared it though mostly to how I felt about some of Yorgos's other work, and so that I think for me is why I rated it at a 3.5, because of what I've seen from his other works.
Yeah,
So
and that's totally fair. And I want to set the further set the table here by saying that after the movie was over, and I saw it a couple of days ago, I've been thinking about it,
mhm.
and yeah, I've got some questions, and maybe there are things that you can help me out with, Mark. Maybe you're
Sure,
going to turn me around. Maybe we're going to meet completely in the middle and
we'll
just be
be in the
like,
middle. There we go.
"Eh." um, but yeah, it's I think kind of the magic trick of a captivating film, where even if there are problems kind of unfolding before your very eyes, you don't necessarily notice them, or at least I didn't, or they didn't bother me. Or maybe I was just thinking, well, this could be a problem, but surely they'll resolve it by the end of the film. Even if they don't, it wasn't until like later on the drive home I was like, wait a second, that doesn't make any damn sense. But what are we talking about here? We are talking about um, a remake of
Mhm.
Jang Joon-won's 2003 Korean film Save the Green Planet, which I have not seen. This also marks Lanthimos' fourth collaboration with actress Emma Stone, with whom he first worked on 2018's The Favorite, another movie I saw, and I don't remember much where I came down on The Favorite. I think it
Mhm.
was all right, but I think I liked Olivia Colman more than I liked Emma Stone in that movie. But
Sure.
I could also be several years ago, pre-COVID, so I can't rely on any memory from that period of time,
No, you
really.
can't. Yeah.
Um, but this movie, she stars as Michelle, who's a high-powered, no-nonsense CEO of a pharmaceutical research company, and her life is upended when she's kidnapped by two cousins who believe her to be the herald of an extraterrestrial invasion, or at least a conspiracy.
Part
Um,
of it, yeah.
yeah, and they want to there's 3 days left until a lunar eclipse, and the kidnappers goal is to kind of prepare her to call down the mothership so they can negotiate her return and the aliens evacuation from planet Earth, thus saving humanity. Now we're gonna go into spoilers, so I just want to warn everybody, anything is fair game. We could talk about the ending, we could talk about the middle, but we're definitely going to be talking about some of the surprises in Begonia. So if you want to remain completely pure, please go watch the film and come back to this stream. I mean, if you go tonight, we're not going to be talking that long, so you'll have to catch this in the future. But you know what I'm talking about. You get the idea.
Yeah, yeah.
I should mention that the cousins are Teddy and Don, played by Jesse Plemons and Aidan Delbis, who is making his feature film debut here, playing an autistic character who, in real life, is an autistic actor who, from what I understand, just did the Hollywood fairy tale thing of sending in a tape and kind of getting discovered and winding up in a Yorgos Lanthimos film
Oh,
opposite Jesse Plemons and Emma Stone, which
I
is
didn't realize that about Aidan, and that's awesome because Aidan's the heart of this movie.
yeah. And also in terms of where his character ends up, I've got a giant question mark hanging there.
Sure.
Which maybe you can help me out with that too.
Mhm.
But Mark, you said that this movie was not, it's not a home run for you. Let's delve into a bit of, why that might be. What was it that kind of bothered you about it, or did you think, oh, it's just
Well,
okay? It's not. It's kind of a little overhyped.
I'm not going to say it's overhyped. I think for me, out of where again my rating came from is from how I felt about Yorgos's other work. Like, Killing of the Sacred Deer surprised the hell out of me when I watched it. I know you didn't care for it, but I loved Poor Things. Uh, I, what I've seen of his, I really, really enjoy of Yorgos's. He goes dark and very surreal and fanciful. I would say for this one, I think why it didn't quite hit it out of the park is because of his approach to the other work. And it's not saying this movie is safe by any means. It's wild. It's crazy. It takes chances. It will surprise you. At the same time, for a Yorgos Lanthimos film, this felt a little bit safer, a little bit more, I should say, accessible to mainstream with his approach, it seems, to the story than, say, his other work. Because his other work is some dark indie stuff that you're just either going to get or you're not. This one, I think for me, from what I've seen of his other work, again, I haven't seen it all, but from what I've seen of his other work, this one just felt like it was a little bit safer. And that's not saying it's a bad film. I'm just,
Mhm.
for me, where I rated it, I would say he takes chances here, but not nearly as many as some of his past works. So I
Okay.
think that's where I kind of sat with it, and that's why it didn't blow it out of the park for me. But I was still very happy with it, especially as it progressed and where we end up with. I loved it. Um, you know, but yeah, it that's why it didn't. It took a little bit longer than I'd like to get to the really wild stuff. And I like his stuff because it goes really wild and dark. Like, you'll watch it and like within fight, you're like, oh, we went there. Nicole Kidman's character is going into a car. Oh, she's just going to negotiate. Oh no, she's not going to negotiate. She's going to do something more than that. Stuff like that. He has a few more of those, I think, moments in his other work. And so that's why for me, it wasn't like, but I mean, as
Yeah.
far as what's been offered this year, oh yeah, I dig it. I mean, it's one of the better films this year so far.
Okay. And it's curious because while I was watching that, I was thinking kind of the opposite, that Poor Things was a big kind of Academy Awards and award season darling a few years
Mhm.
ago. Emma Stone won the Oscar for that movie, and it was kind of bonkers, a gonzo movie, but it did feel more on the mainstream side of things, just in terms of like kinetic
Sure.
action and forward
Mhm.
momentum. This movie is mostly dialogue and
Yeah.
talking. And I was thinking in the middle of it, I'm wondering how this is going to play for a wider release on
Mhm.
audience. Because I kept thinking, the phrase popped into my head was my dinner with Andromeda, because it's essentially these three characters in a
Mhm.
basement or at a kitchen table,
Sure.
mostly trying to convince each other that A, there's an alien invasion coming, or B, there's no alien invasion, you morons. I'm just a CEO, and you've gone completely around the bend. Before we get into further into that, Mike Crowley of YPA Reviews, how you doing, sir?
Hi, sorry for being late. I just came back from space. I mean, work.
Oh, well,
Anyway.
there you go.
Yeah, no, sorry. I actually forgot. I thought it was at 8:30, and thank God I have the notifications on my phone. It said it was live now, and I grabbed all my stuff. And yeah,
Well, you are here.
yeah.
So what did you make of? We're firmly in spoiler territory, although we haven't
Okay,
gotten
good.
any of the crazy stuff yet, like the
Okay,
really nutso stuff.
okay.
But what did you make of Bugonia?
You know what? I absolutely loved it until the last 5 or 10 minutes. and that took away like a full star for me.
Really?
Yeah, because those last few minutes, it's a lot like the ending of Take Shelter, where you're like, oh, they're right, and you see that, and it just feels kind of like it was a subversion that wasn't fully thought out. It was more like a subversion for the sake of subversion, and it kind of went against what the rest of the movie was saying, which was it was sort of a movie about how people are raised on the wrong beliefs and how certain algorithmic data disconnects us from objective reality and what happens to people when they fall into that sort of net, especially now where, the internet, like whatever you go on Facebook, whatever your beliefs are, it will reinforce that. So like, this guy in the movie, Jesse Plemons' character, he thinks that Emma Stone, this healthcare CEO, is an alien from another planet, and it's absolutely insane. But the fact is, he's like, oh, there's that one line in the movie where she said, I can prove to you everything's wrong. And he says, why? Because you read it in the New York Times.
Yeah.
And that kind of proves like how people think. They're like, well, I don't believe in the in the press, so I'm going to go to these other sources for information. And it creates people like that. And it also kind of gives people who like are kind of screw ups in life, or who've had a really screwed up childhood like this character did, a reason to live and a purpose to exist, but it's for a cause and an action that really shouldn't exist. So yeah, it had
Well, I mean,
all
it's
that going
curious
for it, and
because
then it went to the last few minutes.
well, I mean, but you're kind of making it sound like that's the exclusive domain of like one side of the political aisle. Because if she had said, "What did you see that on Fox News?" Would you just had that same reaction?
Well, yeah, because it's still a major news source. So the whole
Right.
point is she's pointing out a news source,
Mhm.
but she's also, but the problem is this guy doesn't care what is like on television, what is in the news. It's what is, what he's going to like. It's basically like maybe you could call it his Breitbart or whatever else.
Sure, but I mean I guess that goes back to the age-old question of like, do you trust the media? Why and which media? Right? Because everything to a certain extent is informational manipulation. There is no such thing as the source of truth that is broadcast like all over the place. Because with any news story, especially nowadays, and I think that's one of the things this movie is sort of getting into, is the idea that there can be something that is true from a certain point of view, but you're not going to be privy to all the facts all the time. And that's the ultimate kind of message of that last 5 minutes. Particularly in the one conspiracy theory that is never mentioned in the film, but is shown to be true, which I thought was kind of the most interesting conceit of the entire thing. Now, the exchange of information, or the kind of hostage negotiation of Teddy and Don working with Michelle, the supposed alien, is on the day of the lunar eclipse. They're going to meet with the alien empire. This is what Teddy believes, and say, okay, here's your princess back. We want you to leave Earth. They keep showing a countdown of this eclipse. It's like 3 days until the lunar eclipse, and they show the Earth. And then when it gets to day 2, this is kind of like an in-space view of the planet. We notice that there's a little bit of a weird perspective on the planet Earth. By the time they get to day 1, it's very flat, shall we say. And then at the very end, when it turns out, yes, she is an alien, an alien commander. Again, spoilers, folks, you've been warned. She ultimately decides that humanity is not worth preserving, so she literally pops the atmosphere on the planet. And when she does so, it is a completely flat disk. So the idea is it's a conspiracy that's not mentioned by any of the characters in the film who are giant conspiracy theorists, but the truth of the reality of this universe is that the Earth is flat, which means that all the people on the planet in our contemporary reality who might argue the Earth is round, they are in fact wrong, because there are some things that you just can never know, whether you're talking about like the truth of God or aliens or whatever. Now, I just want to go on the record and say I'm not a flat earther.
I was about to say.
I'm talking about what the movie believes, but I think it's a fascinating kind of spin that there's the truth that the humans believe, the reality that the aliens know, and the reality that the aliens are trying to convince the humans of as they evolve. It's very matrixy in its idea of this kind of hyper intelligence that's messing around with humanity and the way that it has evolved to kind of end up in this position where Teddy believes that something has been corrupted in mankind, and he takes that to mean politics or feminism or something that kind of like things have been wrong for 10 plus years, and he can't quite figure out what, but he gets cottoned onto this alien invasion idea. He takes that to its nth degree, which involves kidnapping multiple people, it turns out, and experimenting on them in the same way he does with Michelle. She's a bit stronger than some of the other people, and that's what really convinces him that she's an alien queen or princess or something. But he's right. So I can understand that kind of the rug pull at the end. Like, I'm assuming you wish that he had been proven wrong. I don't know that makes for an interesting movie, because then it just becomes Silence of the Lambs. The cops bust in and take the guys to jail, and she goes back to being a CEO.
Well, I didn't quite get it as like it would be a Silence of the Lambs, but it felt like it was kind of counterintuitive to the whole point of the movie. But then again, I guess the point is you never know what the truth is. But I
Except that the
get what
truth is
they're
out
going.
there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like it turned into some X-Files stuff, and like I get why I did that, but it felt like a movie that was playing it so grounded and so believable, where it takes that huge left turn. Now I like it when directors take chances and stamp their flag in the ground. This time it just didn't quite land, as it does the other times. It felt more like oh, here's how I'm going to trick you again. I bet you didn't think she was an alien. Well, she's an alien. They're right. And when you do that, it's like there needed to be some kind of build up to that actual truth. And I guess the argument could be, well, the whole movie is a build up.
Yeah.
But but the thing is, they could have hinted at something where Michelle wasn't a dromedon. Yeah.
Well, they do. I mean, there's one very obvious clue
When they electrocute her and
no.
response.
I mean, that's I'll say that's the big obvious clue. The more subtle one is almost is there something wrong with the projector in my theater problem, which is when she's talking to Don, who's the autistic cousin. He's in the basement. He's got a shotgun trained on her, while upstairs Teddy is talking to the sheriff's deputy who's swung by to investigate the missing persons case, which is Michelle. While she's talking to him, did you guys pick up on
it's blurred
distortion field, the audio and the visuals kind of like it's never quite explained what is going on. It's not quite mind control, but you almost get the sense that she's messing with him somehow, which brings me to my question of Don's demise, which we'll get to in a second. But that's an obvious clue. The other thing, which isn't so much a clue, but it's sort of the usual suspects type thing of once you know the answer, the identity of Kaiser Soze, you want to go back and kind of reconsider what this character has been doing throughout the film. This is where I think Emma Stone really shines in this performance. It's all in facial acting that is all about how things register in her brain, and you can see it behind her eyes. Because when she's first kidnapped and she's drugged and she wakes up and her hair's been shorn off because the guys believe that the hair is the key to being able to communicate with the mothership and all this bizarre stuff. They've covered her in like exfoliant cream or something like that. It's really freaky. But she wakes up on this mattress, and Jesse Plemons comes in and delivers this long, very detailed, very full of conviction, but not necessarily convincing because he's insane or not, monologue. We see her, a couple of close-ups on her face where she's taking in the information. She's realizing where she is. She's realizing who she's talking to, and that he's completely batshit nuts, and that she has to figure out a way to talk him down from this. And she doesn't quite know if she's going to get out of it, but she refuses to give up, so she has to fight. All of this in a look that doesn't quite change, but you can tell some very subtle differences in the way she's processing the information. Now, there's another dimension to this. Once the film's over and realize that she is who they suspect her to be, the other dimension is, oh shit, I'm caught. How am I going to work this out? Because they are still very dangerous, even though I am part of a alien super intelligence. So yeah, I mean, that's this thing is, there's a lot kind of going on here in terms of the acting. I was much more impressed with Emma Stone here than I was in Poor Things. I think the unifying factor is it's a very physical role, from the kidnapping attempt to, you know, she's wounded in the basement later on, to just the way she interacts with these characters, even the subtlety of a dinner table where she kind of tries to take control of the conversation. I think she's brilliant in this movie.
Yeah.
Well, her and Jesse Plemons both. I mean, I always like Jesse Plemons because he's one of those where you recognize him, but not. He's one of those actors where you recognize who he is, but at the same time, you're like, is that Jesse? You know, it's just one of those things where that's the type of character he is. And he and Emma Stone really get the shine in here with their back and forth with it. And I love the performances for sure. Again, you know, on its own, if this was my first Yorgos movie, I might have rated it a little higher and taken it more. But I've always liked Emma Stone's performances. And here, yeah, she playing a different role than you might be used to seeing her in. But she takes command of it. And what I find interesting, and the layer that I took from this, was Jesse Plemons' character, Teddy. Teddy, in all honesty, I don't think Teddy actually believes the aliens. I think
believes in them.
Here's the way I kind of took it, and this is the way I kind of interpreted it is, you had a big pharma company do something to his mom. It didn't go right. They did give compensation, but his mom's now in assisted living to a bed, basically comatose. He doesn't really acknowledge him or anything. We get the idea from Teddy that he's had a rough childhood, including the sheriff who shows up, and we find out in some dialogue, which that is Yorgos right there. I was like, oh, you know, just nonchalantly that, yeah, you know, that thing I did when I was your babysitter, you know, I really didn't mean, and I'm like, okay, we went there, you know, and just the way that conversation is. But the way I took this film was that Teddy was looking for an excuse to do something, to lash out. He was looking for a reason. He was lost. His mom was his only world. He didn't have his dad. His mom was an addict. That's why she got the drug from the pharmaceutical company that Michelle ran to try to help her with addiction, which, you know, Michelle and her company, you do get the feeling, and that's part of Emma Stone's performances, that they truly legitimately wanted to help the human race with addiction, and it just went wrong. And, you know, I felt that it was a coincidence that he actually found out that Michelle was an alien. I don't think he truly down deep believed it. I think part of him was looking for a reason to do these things and focus on something, because otherwise he would have been completely lost and might have taken a different route. But here he's got a purpose. She's an alien. I know she's an alien. I've read stuff, you know, online and whatnot, because he's got a fragile psyche to begin with. What helped him, I know I'm not explaining this, but I think it's a coincidence. I don't think he actually deep down thought she would actually be an alien. And it just so happens that no, she actually deep down is an alien. And that's what complicates the situation with this.
Well, I might be inclined to buy that if they hadn't established that he had already killed several other people in his pursuit and identified two other Andromedans. Right. Now, here's the thing, like, I love the last 15 minutes of this movie, or 20 minutes probably, but it's also where all of the narrative problems kind of come into play. And we're just going to jump right to it, except I do want to pull over and talk about the sheriff's character. The one bit where I thought, okay, this really is playing to the back seats. This is the mainstream audience dialogue. When the sheriff's deputy first, when we meet him and he it's either the first, the second conversation he has with Teddy. He does mention that thing about, the babysitter kind of incident and something went wrong, and he's kind of sorry about what happened. That to me was like, oh, that's to your point, Mark, like, oh, the movie is going there. But then at the end of the film, in one of his last scenes, he actually comes and spells it out for the audience, like,
Right.
in case you didn't
in case you
understand
didn't
what we're
pick up
talking
on
about.
it.
I'm like, no, I was keeping up, and just
Yeah.
the physiognomy of that guy, you can tell, like,
Right.
he does not need to be anywhere near a playground. I don't care if he's got a badge or not, but and I think that was a great performance, even as the kind of the side character, because I was kind of waiting for that heel turn where he had done some messed up things, but now had kind of become a law enforcement guy to kind of cover up for some stuff, and maybe even put himself in a position of authority over people who could do even worse things. But I got the sense that no, he really was remorseful, and his career in law enforcement was sort of his way of making up for that. Almost a mirror of, I like what you're saying, Mark. Teddy's obsession with space aliens is a way to compensate for the awful things that happen in his life. But I do believe that Teddy thinks that there are space aliens, but I don't understand where Don was in this entire, the secret room full of all the other corpses, because when Teddy is electrocuting Michelle and he's like cranking it up to the point where he's about to destroy the house, like all the electricity in the house with the amount that he's juicing her, and he's like, this has never happened before, and then Don's like, before? So he's only recently been brought in to on the Michelle job, as I'll call it. So what was that relationship like? Because I got the feeling they'd been living together for some time. Those bodies in there weren't like mummies. They were still pretty fresh, even though they being preserved. So help me out here. Am I missing something, or did that just not make any sense?
I think. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Oh no, go ahead. I haven't seen the movie in 2 weeks. So I don't. Really
I think he was just hiding it from Don, and the way Don is, you could see how because Teddy manipulates Don constantly. He's his only friend. I wouldn't doubt that he hid it from Don, because I think Don also worked as well because he wasn't always around. But you get the impression, while they live together, Teddy's been keeping this secret from Don until he needs to pull the Michelle job, and he realizes he can't do that one himself. Whether or not that's truly believable, but I believe that's what it is. And where he's got the room and such, Don isn't one that'd be, if you would have told Don, hey, don't go in that room, he wouldn't go in that room ever. Even as curious as he is, he probably would never actually go in that room. And as controlling as Teddy is, I get the impression that it probably wouldn't take too much for him to hide these things from Don. And I almost wonder if the people that are in that room that Teddy has, well, we know some of them were alive. I don't know if all of those, if some of them maybe were cadavers that he stole too. It's hard to say, but
well, I mean,
but I'm just saying that
you're straying way far afield in terms of like, what the filmmakers could have possibly had in mind, because there's never mention of like a morgue or like a medical school or anything. He's not Herbert West, right?
No, he's not. But I'm just saying that with the way Don is and the way Teddy is able to manipulate Don, I wouldn't be surprised that he was able to convince Don, even if Don did suspect something at first, to have him forget it by distracting him with a different thing.
If they didn't live together, because there's a big difference between, hey, don't go in that room, to, hey, never go in the basement, because that's where the room was a hidden kind of like compartment within the basement. I get that. I'm not convinced that even though he had things wrapped up in plastic, that you could prevent the smell over time.
It's true. Yeah. That is true.
But
convenience.
I mean, from what we see of just Michelle's experience, she's yelling, she's thrashing about, she's banging on the chains. Like, if it had been established that Don lived across town and just like visited a lot or stayed over sometimes, maybe you could do that, and I think that might have tightened things up. But yeah, it I agree, Mark. I think what you're suggesting is what the film was trying to go for, but if you're taking it back to, does this make any sense? The answer is no, which is why that last 15 minutes and the kind of the questions it introduces, the problems, are so disappointing, because I think the rest of the film is pretty smart, particularly in the dialogue.
Right.
My other question, the big question mark hanging over me, is Don's death. Now, he's got the shotgun trained on Michelle. She convinces him that she's going to take him with to the spaceship. And she's like, okay, we can go now. And Don's like, yeah, I'm ready to go. And then he just does the thing with the shotgun and takes himself off the table. I'm trying to be as delicate as possible. Why? There's not been any indication that this is a hail-bop situation where by dying is when you get to the alien mothership. The entire film, when he's been talking to Teddy about like going on the ship, it's like, yes, we're going to be beamed up there. So I don't understand why he did that, unless part of that mind control was her working. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe that little squibbly bit with the distortion was her planning that in his head. But she seemed just as surprised as the audience when she ended up not only splattered with blood, but like giant gallons of red Caro syrup pouring out of her mouth.
I loved it.
Which apparently like got cleaned up in the next scene. Like, how did the next scene when they cut to her again, like it's all clean? Like what? Like that was a lot of blood.
She was still when
She
it
was
cuts
still
back, she was
fairly
still
bloody.
covered in blood. I don't know.
It was a
I don't
lot
think
less.
she
It
was
was a lot drier. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Continuity, but
possibly. But
yeah.
but yeah, Mark, what's your theory on that? Or do you have one?
Well, no, I was wondering about that. And the one thing that's very subtle in Don, and this is why I really liked Aidan Delbis's performance in this, is that this is a guy who throughout this entire scenario is very torn in what they were doing versus what Teddy was telling him was doing and what he was actually thinking was right and how he was actually perceiving Michelle. And there was a lot of, while it's subtle, there was a lot of that going on in his head of mixed up feelings in that. So I think while on the surface, he's being Don and he's like going with Teddy, he's having a lot of issues with what Teddy has had him do, including the chemical castration, which was the big, like, that was the big convincing for Teddy. And even after it was done, Don really, that was brought up a few times by Don. So
because he did, was it before or after he said that, I would like to have children someday, or I would have liked to have had children someday. Yeah. That was really sad.
Yeah, it was very sad. So I think what they may have been going for is he was having a lot of mixed stuff going on and not feeling like the good person, that he wanted to be. And the further they went, the further he realized how wrong it was, and he was having trouble processing it. Add on top of that she was trying to get him to let her go, and them going, I think, helped push him over the edge to where it was one of those where on the surface he's like, okay, I'm ready to go. But internally, the subconscious that's actually controlling Don took over for a minute and goes, I can't take this. I can't take the idea of going into a ship. Honestly, he was only going because Teddy's convincing him. And now he has the actual opportunity and is convinced is real. I think it was the mixture of that and fear. And he didn't know how to tell Teddy he didn't want to go to the extreme. I'm just saying, I think because if you watch his performance and what he mentions throughout, he becomes more and more conflicted, not only with what they're doing and himself, but the idea of going. And I think that gets all balled up. Now, is it the extreme reaction? Yes, I will fully say. But I think that's what was that final straw when he was actually convinced, oh, this is real, this is happening. And it was oh shit, this is real, this is happening. And so he just, he took the way out that he felt he needed because he felt like he didn't really have an option of either saying no to her or saying no to Teddy. And then he's like, well, I can't have a life that I want anymore because I just chemically castrated myself. And
once again, I think that might be some thought in the filmmakers' minds, but it very much speaks to me. We're at the end of the movie. We got to get Donnie off the board. So we're
There's
just going
that
to have him
too.
do it, because I like what you're saying, but I think there needed to, especially because it's such a dialogue heavy film,
Right.
there was plenty of room to
Mhm.
insert more of that supporting evidence for what you're suggesting there, because I just don't see it. He was a sad character. He was a disappointed character, but there's a difference between that and, taking that ultimate step.
True.
I do like the idea of, maybe some kind of mind manipulation from the alien to make him think that was a good idea. But even there, we get a little bit of that wiggly boo distortion stuff, and then it's kind of over. And that's just not satisfying.
It's either that, or I mean, with her surprise, her not knowing truly what type of character or what Don has actually going on, her manipulation may have sparked that idea unintentionally to where she's just trying to convince him to go, but her control on the type of mind that Don has ended up taking it to a different extreme that she didn't even expect, because she is legitimately surprised, because you get the feeling that she does kind of care about Don, a little bit. She's like, I mean, she wants to get out of it. He's done, but she realizes how much of a pawn he is, and not only is he an opportunity, but you also get just a little bit of hint in places that she does actually feel some things. And I think that's maybe could have been too. I don't know if Mike's got something for it, but I think maybe.
Well, it's funny the way Don killed himself. It did seem a little sudden. It just felt like he kind of decided to do it, and yeah, it was probably because he's so disabled mentally that he probably can't step out of his comfort zone and didn't want to go on the spaceship, but also he did want to have another life. And at the same time, he never got to be his own self. He was always controlled by his family, whether it be his mother or his brother or whatever. Was he conscious of all those women being tortured and killed and all that? I mean, yeah, they told him about it. He probably had his feelings about it, that he didn't want to do it. There's that one scene where uh, Teddy's strangling Michelle, and he's holding the shotgun, and he's telling him, don't do it, get off of her. I don't want. But of course, he can't bring himself to hurt anyone. So in the end, he kind of hurts himself. And yeah, I mean, he's kind of a tragic character where, he's kind of cowardly, but at the same time, he's got a lot of disabilities that make him that way. And I think because he was slow, a lot of people just kind of took advantage of that. And I think he couldn't really handle the thoughts in his head, and that's why he ended up kind of offing himself. So in a lot of ways, it did make sense why he did that.
I disagree. I don't think they're, he is, Teddy does have a lot of control over him, but he also expresses a lot of what is meant, I think, to be genuine love. It's an affection that is not the most, keenly expressed, but you don't get the idea that Don is just a pawn in Teddy's game. There's a lot of kind of affection there. As far as the, Don's ultimate solution to his problem, again, I don't think it makes sense, because he asks to go to be taken away.
Right.
He's like, "Can you take me with you on your ship?" And she's like, "Yes." That's her. Like, yes,
Right.
fine. If that's what it takes to get out of this basement, yeah, you can come with me. That's fine. And so it's not like she was like, "You can come with me on the ship." And he's like, "I don't want to go." And she's like, "Yes, you do." "I don't want to go." "Yes, you do." And then pop. That would make
Right.
sense. But what we have here, again, it seems like this is the last bit. They wanted to jump over this business so you get to the awesome part where the atmosphere is punctured and everyone's dead. And they're like, yeah, people are going to be so jazzed by the last 5 minutes of this movie that they're not going to care about little details like plot consistencies. I do want to say that the nihilistic ending, if you want to call it that, where we go around the world and see how like everybody on the planet is dead instantaneously, it looked like, because people just kind of collapse right where they are. there's no evidence of like choking or anything. It's almost like their brains instantly got shut off, but there's still wildlife around.
Yes.
So you almost get the sense that from visually, it looks like Emma Stone popped like the ozone layer or something on, covering the planet. And that's what deprived people of oxygen. But then you've got birds and moose or bears or whatever is going around. So it was something in that protective layer that was attuned to the human psyche or frequency or something. What did y'all make of that?
Well, I already said what I thought of the ending, but I will say they thought that humans were bad, not animals. They're not like bunny rabbits need to be extinct. They're like, no, we need to get rid of humanity because all they do is create problems. And the funniest thing is that originally they weren't going to do that, but then after Teddy tortured and nearly killed her, it kind of switched her perspective. So, it's definitely a dark ending, a nihilistic one, as you say. But although I don't like the ending, I understand the motivation behind it.
What's interesting is when she pops it, and again, this again is a testament to Emma Stone. I mean, I've always been an Emma Stone fan, even if I don't like some of the films she's in. I do enjoy her performances, and in this one, even when she goes up to pop the bubble, she hesitates, and it's in her eyes. It's just what you were saying, Ian. In her eyes, you see just a hesitation, like, well, maybe just a little ounce of regret, not a huge amount, not much that's going to, dominate her feelings, but just in that moment when she gets to the actual inevitability of actually doing the moment, she hesitates just a little. Like, Teddy's not what I went through. That's not every. Do we have a chance? And then she's like, yeah, no. And she pops it. And it goes along with her dialogue though. And it's that wonderful monologue she delivers after she discovers the room, and she goes, how many were confirmed Andromedans? And he goes, 2. And she just delivers that wicked monologue about her species and being a queen. And that was before that, was it? Where she was giving her speech about how she is an actual queen and an empress, and there was Atlantis, and then they failed, and she just
and Noah's Ark and all that, basically going through all of human history and people's understanding of the past, rather through myth or religion, and talking about how we got here. Again, that's sort of the Matrix part.
Yeah, exactly. That it definitely was the Matrix, where you realize the Andromedans here have been trying to make humanity better, and humanity just keeps self-destructing its opportunities to do that. And that's what we're getting here, is yet another example of humanity on a micro scale, with her being kidnapped, and that basically destroying the idea that, we are worth saving. I mean, you even have that point, which my son didn't quite care for it, but I thought it was interesting in her perception of certain things and the reality of things, because she sits there so that she can distract Teddy. Once she gives this wonderful monologue that she's the queen, and again, this is before the discovery of the people. When she gives that monologue, she's a queen, and convinces them that she is actually the queen, she convinces Teddy then, here's the cure. I've got a bottle that looks like antifreeze in my car, but it's not antifreeze. It's the actual cure. And Teddy, after that huge monologue, which basically checkmarked all the boxes in Teddy's head of if she was a queen or not, that's where Michelle gets it, where Teddy's coming from. And she just checks off the boxes and tells him the whole truth of, this is the way it is. He goes off, and then when he actually kills his mom with the antifreeze, he comes back, and she seems again a bit surprised, like, wait, you went? He's like, I would have thought somebody would have stopped you or something, so she starts seeing the other failings in humans' culture of, how did he get into his mom's room and do that without anybody? She's suddenly...
Well, and that's a great... I hate it when screenwriters do that, where they have something that's a major plot hole, but then they have a character comment on it as if that fixes the problem for the audience.
Sure.
Right. Because, it's a modern hospital. It's a small hospital, but she goes in there, or he goes in there. His mother, Alicia Silverstone, is hooked up to these machines, and he basically swaps the drip for a giant thing of antifreeze. Let's pull over a second. Michelle does say before Teddy leaves for the hospital, go to your car, you're going to get this yellow bottle out or whatever, and it's going to look like antifreeze. It's marked antifreeze, but it's not. It's the cure.
Right.
Up till this point, and again, this is in the last 20 minutes of the movie, this is where all the problems really come to bear, where the screenwriters throw unnecessary kind of stuff in here that undercuts all the intelligence from the previous part of the film. Because Teddy's a very smart man. He's creative. I mean, he built that 3D model of what he imagined the alien ship to look like. It's kind of a cosmic joke that it ended up looking exactly as he had envisioned it. But he's talented. He's resourceful. You know, he knows, he's built a whole lot of stuff. We know he's handy with tools by evidence what's in his workshop. So even if he doesn't open up the bottle in the back of the trunk to see, is this antifreeze or not? When he gets to the hospital and he's putting the stuff into the drip, he's got to open it up and see, hey, this is the color of antifreeze. This smells like antifreeze. Unless there was some line that was cut out where she says it's going to look and smell like antifreeze, but that's just how we disguise it for the rubes. But even then, on top of that, when he mixes the stuff in there, there's no alarms going off that the bag has been tampered with, all this sensitive medical equipment. And the fact that the antifreeze doesn't start to work on her right away. I mean, it's an IV drip, but it seems to take like 5 minutes for there to be any kind of a reaction. And even when there is reaction, the alarms are going off, but like no one's coming into the room. Now, the commentary is, I can't believe you got away with that. Ha. But the problem is the audience can't either, because it is a literally unbelievable situation.
Well, they came in the room, just not fairly quickly, but they did come in the room because he jumped out the window and
right.
ran.
But that's the thing, is like, as soon as those alarms come off, there's gonna be a nurse's station somewhere.
I can say with personal experience, if it's a small town like one that I'm familiar with, something very personal, it doesn't surprise me that he actually was able to go in there and do that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these places, especially in more rural areas, do not have the staffing to constantly monitor the front door. They do have opportunities where you can come in and out and visit your loved ones, and you don't necessarily need to check into the front desk. You're supposed to, you don't have to. And in fact, when you do and you go in the room, they may not know you're there for quite some time because they only have a limited amount of staff to check on everyone.
Well, I mean, that's interesting, Mark, but it's the responsibility of the film to establish that.
Yeah, no,
because what happens in that scene goes against everything that we as audience members, people who watch movies and televisions about hospitals, that goes against what we know. If you've got, I love that you've got, no, okay, let me rephrase that. I hate that you have that personal experience, but I love that you can testify to the fact that that is a problem, but set that up earlier in the film. Well, and again, to visit his mom and like there's no security, or the nurses are asleep or something, so that when he gets to the end, you're like, how is nobody there until he's jumping out the window?
And visually, no, I get it. You could use some tells for that, but at the same time, I think that was him trying to make the statement of the actual conditions that people are in, to where you could just walk in and do that, and it takes a long time to get a response. I get it. Visually, responsibly to your audience, you probably should set up a few more elements at least for that. But if you're trying to make a statement of how things are in the real world, that was very realistic of how he could just walk in there. But again, you're absolutely right. You could probably use a couple more visual cues of he just walks past and the nurses totally ignore him walking past or whatever. And that part I do get. But on the other hand, yeah, you'd be surprised, especially for a smaller
probably
town
not.
Like that.
It was weird when I saw it. I didn't think, oh no, was there security there? Because I kind of figured, like Mark did, oh, this is probably a understaffed hospital, which there's a whole lot of those. So I could see how he got in there and got the IV. Although to Ian's point, yeah, why don't they have alarms when someone does
Well,
that? Like
I mean,
when you
when her
unplug
heart
the IV, why isn't it
when
like hooked up to like a machine that starts like making a loud noise?
well, it that stuff usually is, and I would say probably the one part in there that is the stretch that they put in there for dramatic sake, for film's sake, is the response time of the person. They should have been in there a lot quicker when her heart monitor went, when her heart started really jumping. They do have monitors for that, even in the smaller facilities. So someone should have been there sooner. And that's the only part of that. Otherwise, everything else about him getting in there and being able to do that, yeah, it's the response time was a bit slower by that staff, and that I will fully say. But everything else about that, yep, you can
Yeah.
scarily enough.
In a way, was she testing Teddy to see if humanity is worth saving? Because she's basically saying, all right, not only because he's stupid, but like, is he crazy and enough where he doesn't think about reason, he doesn't think about logic, and just like most humans, he does something completely, like he basically inadvertently creates petricide and doesn't even know it. And somehow, like when would an Andromedon ever make that mistake? How do humans keep doing this? This is why they keep bombing each other. This is why they keep neglecting the Earth. And I think that was kind of like a reaffirmation. Like, this is his final test. Let's see if he screws this up.
Right.
He does, and then it's like, okay, you know what? Yeah, these guys need to go. I'll use my calculator and teleport to the spaceship, and then we'll have everyone.
I loved it. I love that whole sequence in the office of when they decide to go to her office to get to the teleporter. That whole little sequence there was that was hilarious. I loved how all of that played out.
Yeah, she disappeared for like several days. She comes back, her hair's all messed up.
She's limping because her knee is busted.
Limping.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, Mike, what you had just said there, and before you jumped in earlier in the show, I was talking to Mark about, like, because he's not as high on this movie as he would like. I was, I think, pretty high on it, but I said, you know what, we might meet in the middle. My estimation of this is plummeting by the second, because Michelle's cover is that she's the CEO of this, health tech company. Part of her cover, which I thought was a nice touch, is that she was a chemist by trade. So this isn't something where it's like, oh, she was a CEO at a VP at Marriott who, through a corporate shuffling, ended up just going over to run this pharmaceutical company. You get the feeling this is something that she had started and it grew, and she got funding, and all of a sudden she's on Time magazine and she's hanging out with Michelle Obama, right? So she really has kind of earned this prestige and this position. And even though she is very cold and calculating, and there's this brilliant scene that sort of establishes her character where she has to read that, she has to do this kind of like a corporate video about diversity that goes horribly wrong in all the funniest ways, but she is very, kind of callous towards people. Then you find out later that something that her company had made went terribly wrong and hurt a lot of people. And it's later in the film, once that, there's a couple of different flashbacks that established what the effect had on Teddy and also what the effect had on her. You realize, if you think back, Usual Suspect style, when she goes into the office that first time, she's making a big deal about, okay, everyone gets to go home at 5:30. She's trying to give people more of their time back with their family and be more human, even though there is that kind of funny thing, like, everyone gets to leave at 5:30. Unless you've got an important deadline or a project, but we want to promote,
true CEO fashion. Yeah.
Right. But it is this kind of idea that she does care about people, even though she is not of them, much in the way that Teddy cares for his bees. He can't name the individual bees, but he does tend them, and he keeps colonies, and he kind of laments their life cycle and finds it to be kind of sad, but also, regenerative as well, because there's always going to be more bees. The idea that Michelle unless this was purely fueled by revenge for these other Andromedans who had been, tracked down and killed by this person, that she would decide, okay, humanity is not worth saving because of this one lunatic. I don't buy it, because there are billions of other people on the planet that the Andromedans, this is kind of, I don't know how many other planets they're experimenting on, but they've been watching and interfering with earthly matters for millions of years, it looks like, possibly since the inception, that they have to know that there is good as well as, people who are bad, especially if the bad person that we're talking about is clearly the victim of trauma and mental illness. It's like, I wouldn't want to judge humanity based on, Charles Manson's psychological profile. I'd much rather go with Mother Teresa, but the truth is that most of us are somewhere in between. So yeah, as much as it's a cool ending, and I do like what you said there, Mark, about Michelle's hesitation. It kind of speaks to maybe she has been on Earth way too long by Andromeda standards, and she has been sort of infected by humanity and sort of an affection for us. So there's that bit of conflict, but she ultimately also realizes, well, we're just going to start another bee colony, in another galaxy somewhere. I like that idea, but the more I think about it, I don't like how they got there. It's a lot like the last 15 to 20 minutes of this movie and all the problems that come up. There's just like this giant quality gap between the first hour and a half and that last 20 minutes. I'm like, oh, just tighten the screws a little bit.
Yeah, I wish it ended in the ambulance, but again, because like they're trying to say all this stuff, and it's like they don't know which lane to pick. They keep going in different directions. Is it misinformation? Is it validation? Is it in between? Like, what are we trying to say here? So it just keeps zigzagging, which was the issue I had with it.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, we just disagree on that point, Mike, because I really like the fact that the conspiracy turned out to be true, but in a way that he couldn't have comprehended.
Right.
And also, I do like the idea that I think at one point, this might have been during Michelle's monologue, she's talking about a movement. Like she's like, oh, this is part of your little movement again, to save humanity. And Teddy says, oh no, a movement involves multiple people. This is just me and Don. And I think there might have been another reaction shot, another great Emma Stone reaction shot. It was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
You guys really are around the bend. This is nuts. We don't even have to prepare for war. We just have to deal with the two of you.
Well, and it's one of those things where I don't think final judgment necessarily came from her experience with Teddy and that, because when she gets up there in the spaceship part, and I'll agree, I was kind of hoping they would just end it in the ambulance and still keep it kind of maybe give a little hint that, oh, she might have been an alien, but not actually like confirm it in the last 10 minutes. But then I'm like, when I see the spaceship and I see the hair and everything, I'm like, okay, now there's the Yorgos film that I was kind of expecting. At the same time, I was like, it would confirm it. I'm like, okay, there's the wildness that I'm used to. I was expecting a little bit more of. At the same time, I was disappointed that they actually pulled that trigger, because I would have rather liked them to leave it as a little bit of enigma and maybe a hint that, well, maybe she is, like, have her do one action in the ambulance or something that might hint that she is not actually human, but to confirm it like that. But I think from the discussions that they have when you read the subtitles, because they're talking their alien language, they were looking at doing away with Earth anyway. It almost sounds like she was making kind of the last ditch effort. She was kind of the last holdout with the whole idea of we should pop the bubble. Everybody else seemed pretty convinced on their chair in her discussions with them that, yeah, no, we really should be doing this. And she seems to be on the bubble, so to speak. She was the one that was on that debate going, well, maybe we still have a chance. And and I think this breaking point wasn't like, oh, that's why we're doing it, is because these guys. I think it was already in motion. I think it was just the final nail in the coffin, and because they picked the wrong person. And I think that's too where he's leaning, in that the one Andromedan who may have been holding out saying, no, humans still have a chance we can still, they're still worth saving, is the one that gets kidnapped and gets put through the ringer by the crazy humans, to the point where it affects her thought and the context of this, going, yeah, because you even get that one point in there where I loved it, how it's got kind of a double meaning. And again, Emma Stone, really, it hinges on him. Her and this director just really click, because in here, when she's talking about how she knows Teddy, and he's like, and she says, well, we gave you compensation, almost like she can't comprehend, going, we gave you money. It's one of those things where she can't. And I love that, because that is both something that you've heard CEOs and such say before, going, well, we gave compensation, why do these people still have problems? But at the other hand, it's her as an alien trying to suss out, going, I thought I understood humans. Here's money for the tragedy. You should forgive us and go away.
Well, and but I guess that's the, that is, again, that's a perspective. And I could see, the kind of the cartoonish CEO having that perspective, but an alien that has been monitoring us for that long would likely, again, understand that there is nuance. And not necessarily understand, I gave you money, why isn't that enough? I mean, they watch the news. I'm sure they've read blogs, and I'm sure they've dealt with people for thousands or millions of years. They have a perspective over all of humanity that humanity can't have within the confines of its individual interactions, especially over a long enough period of time. So again, I like a lot of what you're saying here, and I think there's material enough for another movie or another half hour, or at least like using up some of the half hour that they have in here with the dialogue, like sprinkling this in a bit to talk about, like, what does it mean to be an Andromedan? What does it mean to be an Andromedan on Earth? Why do they care about us so much? I mean, the thing about, people and bees, it's not like we are trying to learn their language and get into their psyche or anything. Like, we don't have any relationship with bees. Like, we're never going to sit down and have a cappuccino and talk philosophy with a bee. You can do that with another human being, and the Andromedans are evolved enough, and humans are evolved enough that they can have those conversations. So it's like, what are they doing with us? Why do they care? Are we just an experiment? Are we a mutant version of them? Again, for a film that purports to be a lot about ideas and philosophy and where it all comes from and what it all means, there's just a bit of messiness there. Maybe that's the point, because like, well, no one's ever going to know, but it's not very satisfying from an audience point of view. Again, I'm going down from like an 8 to a 6 on this one. This is falling to earth hard, guys.
Sorry, didn't mean to do
no,
that. But again,
this is why we have these conversations.
Let's go over more plot holes.
No, but this
covered
again, this is also why I think it didn't hit it out of the park for me, like I was kind of thinking it might, like, with Poor Things and some of the other films that I've seen of Yorgos's that really struck a chord with me in this. Is, I think, of the exact things we've been saying tonight, is just that of all the films that I've seen of his, this is the one that seems, as I mentioned, most accessible, because you have these most ideas that don't go as deep as you may want them to be. Yeah. Because even in Poor Things, I know you didn't care about Poor Things, but Poor Things explored some of its concepts deeply. I mean, it came up more than one. It was established. It was, sex work, all that, making statement, but they establish it better in that script than they do here. Here, you're getting these ideas almost in passing, to where it's almost too passive, to where you're like, but wait. And that seems to be a trend lately in some of these wider release films that want to be something that are something that some people are like really praising. If you watch enough of these, you're like sitting there going, there's a lot of great ideas here, but nothing beyond surface level ideas do you get presented. It's like, oh, that was a great idea. Oh, there it goes. But here comes another great idea. Oh, I liked that one. Where'd it go? I've seen a number of movies like that this year, to where I would have enjoyed them more had they taken a beat and explored that really interesting idea they just gave.
Well, I mean, there's you're hitting on something there, Mark, which is sort of like the cliche of internet culture. It's a mile wide and an inch deep.
Yeah.
You know, you've got all this knowledge at your fingertips, and as we kind of discussed earlier, like that knowledge is speculative at best because, you know, who knows whose truth and what source and all this other stuff, and who can you trust? But yeah, I think my biggest, I guess, regret of this, and I compared this earlier to My Dinner with Andre. That was a movie that was exclusively like a 2-hour conversation between two guys at dinner, but they did talk about like life, the universe, and everything, and it is really deep. So when you have a film that is ostensibly that, but within the, you know, dressed up in the skin of an alien invasion movie, that's really fascinating. And it's disappointing that it gets resolved in like a lot of spectacle and splatter and a really dark, twisted, like everybody's dead kind of ending. Like, yeah, but wouldn't it have been cooler to take that last 20 minutes and just really have a nice chat or to sum everything up?
I kind of liked Mark's idea. Just like there's a little hint that there's something there. Like maybe the lights in the ambulance flicker a bit and it like sinks up to her eyes, you know.
Or, you know, just something really wacky, like the ambulance pulls away and we kind of Men in Black style telescope out of Earth and we see the mothership like, oh, it was up there all along. Cut to black.
She's going to use the memory thingy to make the audience forget what happened.
Or she says something. You could do that to where she says something on a phone or something, or, you know, into her watch or so while she's there. And they lay her back down, and then you do that pull out, and then you find the ship orbiting Earth. It is, you know, that's all you could have done, and maybe still left it like that, going, oh, okay, you know, sure, you've confirmed she's an alien, but leave it a little bit more out there versus what you get. And again, that's, I mean, have you either of you seen The Killing of a Sacred Deer?
Oh, no. Yeah, long time ago. So I don't remember a lot. You know,
that one has interesting ideas and concepts that it dives into as far as relationships within people and families and that, but it gets meatier. And it's a similar approach where it's not that complex. You know, you don't get a huge amount of locations or sets and everything. It's a lot of dialogue and character driven pieces, but that one takes a beat and some time to set some stuff up. So by the time you get to the very interesting ending, which I don't want to spoil it for people, but a very surprising one, it actually makes sense of why you don't like the ending. You're bothered by it, but at the same time, they spent enough time setting it up to where you get that you're going, oh, okay, we went there. You know, it's like they're not gonna go, oh, they went there. Only that had a more emotional impact than this one did, to where it was more, oh, we went here.
Well, and the last thing to kind of wrap up is, as we mentioned earlier on, this is a remake of a South Korean film from, you know, 22 years ago, which I haven't seen. So I don't know how much of this is an adaptation of that, like them wanting to respect the source material, so to speak. And so these problems are the same ones that they had in a legacy film, or if they tweaked it or what. I'm very curious to see that movie, even knowing now how this movie ends up. But
the ending was faithful, I know, because I wrote a Facebook post and one of my friends wrote back, oh, well, you must have not seen the ending if you didn't like the ending of this one. I'm guessing it had the same way. And I'm like, yeah, it does. And so, yeah.
Right. But I mean, as far as like, do they get more into the story and the kind of the ideas that we're talking about, or does it end in that same kind of like splattery spectacle as this film? I don't know. So yeah, I'll have to check it out at some point.
Apparently the original director was supposed to be involved in this, but health problems, and so that's why they went with Yorgos. He liked Yorgos's approach. So but is what I've read anyway. But you know, in general though, it's definitely a unique piece, and it's a piece that at least it still has Yorgos's stamp on it, and it's one that I'm happy they released out into the wild, so to speak, because it is something at least different. you know, in many ways it approaches material differently, and it's nice to get that break, especially during this time of season where you're kind of getting these awards where they're all starting to seem a little similar, to where you're like, wasn't Jennifer Lawrence in this one? No, she's in this one coming up. She's not in this Regretting You one. She's in this other one that has a poster that looks very, you know, it's like, you know, it's one of those things where, yeah, I'm happy. I mean, I still enjoyed it. And it was a very enjoyable film, but at the same time, not quite to the expectations I have for Yorgos.
Yeah. No,
yeah.
well said.
Yeah, there was a movie that it's pretty good, but it's very jumbled. Like, they just kind of needed to get all of their ideas together in one place, because it's trying to do a lot, and I really respect it, and it's definitely like engaging the whole way through. But if they just took a little more time to hone in on one idea instead of like 10 all at the same time, and you know, drop the ball multiple times, or the honey, whichever you want to prefer, it would have been you know, it would have been a little better. But I still, yeah, I almost gave it a 4, but I gave it like a 3 out of 4 on my side.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably, I mean, we still have another month and a half to go for the end of the year. This is just barely hanging on to my top films of 2025, based exclusively on the first hour and a half. And also on Emma Stone's performance, which I think, you know, can't be beaten. Also, Jesse Plemons is great. And I mean, all three of the principals in this movie do very well, up until the point where I think the screenplay lets them down. I do want to mention one other thing. I talked about the bald head and the kind of the exfoliant cream or whatever that is. Jeff York had mentioned that he thought Emma Stone looked a lot like E.T. When he was in the sick tent and and one part of the film. So yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out because I thought that was a pretty brilliant and disturbing observation. Now, I can't see that without seeing E.T. Yeah.
But one of the scariest parts of that movie was seeing him all sickly laying in the river. That's
it's like traumatizing. Yeah, just like the pony in Never Ending Story.
Yeah, Artex. Yeah.
Never seen the movie, but I know the scene. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Whoa. Can you see the Gen Xers here react going, oh.
I know. I'll be like, I have a lot of, when it comes to movies that came out, did it come out in the 80s? I think it came out in the 80s. Yeah. When it comes to movies that came out in the 80s, like, I kind of missed that strain. Like, I grew up on the 90s, like, because by the time it was like 1990 or 92 or 1 or whichever of the three, like, my brain developed a little more and I could understand what I was watching and processing it, you know, compared to, you know, when I was born for like the first 5 years of my life, where it was, you know, it was a lot. And then, of course, like, music always was something I was very particular with in films. And just like the 80s have like just this god awful synthetic.
Hey, tread lightly there, Mike.
No, they're terrible. Like, there's just so many movies where you can just tell it's just some guy on a keyboard, and that's the soundtrack. And
I got stacks of vinyl of guys on keyboards. Okay, that's beautiful stuff. It's beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
Plus the theme song for Never Ending Story. Anyway, check out Never Ending Story. I can't speak for the sequel because I never saw it, but
there's a sequel.
You don't have. It was
really,
a direct. There was a direct to
eventually end.
There was a direct to video sequel, but don't see that. Just see the original. Still some really traumatizing imagery in that film.
Yeah, I mean the horse in the swamp isn't even the most scarring thing in that movie.
Shit,
there's so much more.
The wolf. Oh my god.
The wolf. The sad thing with the rock creature. The
like big,
strong hands, don't they?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh my gosh. I think that was the movie he made after Blade Runner, wasn't it?
Yeah.
One grain of sand.
Yeah. Don't.
Oh no, Ridley Scott didn't do Never Ending Story. You're thinking of Legend with Tom Cruise.
Legend, yeah.
Oh, who did Never Ending Story?
I don't remember.
Legend is just I love the 80s movies. They just threw so much wild shit on screen.
Yes.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was a time of excess. Yeah.
Well, we will litigate the 1980s another time. For right now, I do want to talk about what's coming up next week. Next week, we're going to have 2 live streams. Yes, 2, because there's 2 big movies coming out, one in theaters and one on Netflix. And the one on Netflix is currently in theaters, but I don't know if it's going to be the case once it drops on Netflix. I am, of course, talking about Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, which we'll talk about next Thursday at 8 p.m. Central. And on Tuesday at 8 p.m. Central, we're going to be talking about Predator Badlands. So yeah, join us then. And Wednesday is if you don't have enough to do, but if you're in the Chicago area, check out the Windy City Film Fest, because our very own Earth's Mightiest critic, Katie Glidewell, is featured in a film that's going to be showing at the film fest called Script Tease. So it's I've heard great things. I'm going to check it out. I will not be able to make it, unfortunately, so I need everyone else to go to Windy City Film Fest and show support. The information and tickets and stuff will be in the description down below. You can check that out. But yeah, big week coming up on Kicking the Seat. Yeah, I want to thank, well, Earth's Mightiest Critics. I am Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. We have Mark the Movie Man Krawcheck of Special Mark Productions and the Spoiler Room Podcast, and Mike Crowley of YPA Reviews. You'll probably agree. Thank you for hanging out and talking about Bugonia, a movie that look, I'm not steadfast in all my opinions. This podcast is evidence of that. I can be turned around on some things, and I appreciate the conversation, guys. Yeah, and thank you all out for watching, whether you're catching this live or on the replay. If you like this show, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications, and check out all of Earth's Mightiest Critics. Their information is down below. And until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thanks, take care, and be good. See, that's an ET reference and a B reference, all of which are kind of incorporated into this movie. So yeah, I win or something.